What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about some of the best OnePlus smartphones that you can buy depending on your price range. So let's go ahead and get started here. First is the OnePlus 7 Pro. This is my personal favorite on the list and actually still my daily driver still for 2021. It's crazy, right? So this phone is awesome because right now it's super cheap right now. You can find it for about $350, $400, and I'll have all those links down below. And I think the price is solid for what you're getting here. So you're still getting really a flagship phone that still remains high quality even today. So it's a glass back aluminum frame on here. You can see the main selling point with this phone is the beautiful Fluid AMOLED display. It's no notch, no punch hole. It's got a curved screen to give you that full screen effect, and it's a 1440p display. It's a big phone at 6.67 inches and 516 for the PPI, so extremely sharp and beautiful display, just vibrant colors. And like I said, the viewing experience on this phone is going to be great for watching videos, and even if you're just going through social media scrolling, you're always going to appreciate this uninterrupted display. So it does have the latest version of Android, running Android 11 on this guy with the latest Oxygen OS. It's still pretty smooth. I usually don't have any performance problems with this phone because you're running the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640. So gaming on this phone is fine. I still use this phone to game all the time, so I've never had an issue doing that. You also don't have any micro SD card support, which kind of sucks on here, but you do have 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM, which should be enough for most people, honestly. Now, you do have some really nice sounding stereo speakers on here. They have really good bass quality and good mids and highs on here, so I was happy with that. Unfortunately, the only thing I don't like about this phone is that it does not have a headphone jack. I really wish they put a headphone jack on this phone. It would be, you know, a 10 out of 10 perfect phone. But you do have NFC on this guy, as well as the under the display fingerprint sensor, so your mobile payments getting into your phone is really fast on here. And also you can use the pop-up selfie camera if you want to use the face unlock as well, which looks really cool when people see you know, your camera pop up. So you do have on here pretty good cameras. I still think the 7 Pro has excellent cameras. I think for somebody like me that doesn't take a ton of photos, you know, my whole thing is you want to take the phone out, you want to take a good picture, good detail, good color. This phone does that. So you have a triple camera setup, 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. You get 4K video as well as a 16 megapixel selfie pop-up camera with 1080p. As you can see from the photos, they, you know, explain themselves. You got good color, good detail, good depth of field. The ultra wide is pretty good. It has pretty good color as well. Telephoto lens, you get a good amount of blur here, 3x optical zoom. So I'm still okay with the cameras. I've never complained about the cameras on this phone. So you do have a 4000 milliamp battery with 30 watt fast charging. There is no type of wireless charging. Technically, there is no IP rating, but this phone charges super fast as well. So battery life, I'm usually getting around 7 to 8 hours of screen on time, again depending on how hard you use your phone. But the 7 Pro is, you know, my first recommendation here. All right, so next, if you want the best of what OnePlus is offering, the OnePlus 9 Pro is the best phone that they're offering right now, and it's pretty expensive at, you know, over $1,000. But you do get a lot with this phone. So one of the things I like is the design on the 9 Pro. It's a really nice glass back aluminum frame. It actually has an official IP rating, IP68, which is really nice on here. And you do have on here their Fluid AMOLED 2 display at 6.7 inches. It's a 1440p 525 for the PPI, 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1300 nits in brightness. It's a beautiful display from what I've seen. They still kind of keep the little curve, but you do have the punch hole on this phone as well. So if the punch hole doesn't bother you, you're definitely getting a really awesome display. It's super fast. If you've never tried 120 Hz, it is blazing fast. This phone, of course, is going to have the latest version of Android with Oxygen OS, and you also have the Snapdragon 888. So if you want the most powerful, you know, chipset out right now, if you're a big gamer on your phone and you want to play games at max settings and all that stuff, then this is a phone that you should definitely look at, paired with the Adreno 660. Again, no SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM on this guy. You also have stereo speakers on this guy as well. Again, no headphone jack, NFC is on board. The fingerprint scanner is under the glass, but the weird thing that they did with this year's model is they moved it down a lot, which makes no sense. So it's hard harder to reach. So that is one thing that I noticed as well, but it should still be fast just like the 7 Pro. And honestly, the biggest upgrade that you're looking at here is with the new Hasselblad partnership here. So you have a quad camera setup, a 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel telephoto, 50 megapixel ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor with 8K video and a 16 megapixel selfie camera. I've seen the sample shots and it takes great pictures. If you're coming from the 7 Pro, you'll definitely notice a huge upgrade, especially with image quality. So that is one thing. If you're coming from the 8 Pro, you will also notice it as well. You will definitely notice the upgrade with the ultra wide because it takes amazing ultra wide photos. But yes, this phone is going to be great for anybody that wants just the most powerful and up-to-date OnePlus phone, of course. So the battery situation is a 4,500 milliamp battery. You get a crazy 65-watt fast charging. OnePlus does include the charger in the box. How crazy is that? And you also get wireless charging at 50 watts. So just extremely fast charging for both the wired and wireless charging as well. So yeah, the OnePlus 9 Pro, definitely take a look at this one. Next is the OnePlus 9. I paid $729 for this phone, and this is a really good phone. Right off the bat, I like the design kind of on this guy. The more I'm looking at these other sort of mid-range phones like the Note 10 Pro and the A52, I think they could have did a slightly better job with the design on this phone, mostly just making the back a matte finish and not this glossy finish, because it does feel it doesn't feel as premium as I think some other flagships and mid-rangers like the Galaxy S20 and stuff. But it's honestly, it's all up to you how you feel about the design. But again, glass back on here, plastic frame. You have IP68 dust and water resistant, and you also have a beautiful display on here. It's a 6.55-inch display. It's Fluid AMOLED, 120 Hz, HDR10+, 1100 for the nits. So it's a very bright, vibrant display, 1080p, 402 for the PPI. I really like the display. It just made everything feel extremely smooth with the 120 Hz. And you do have the little punch hole up there as well, respectable bezels on here. And Oxygen OS running on top of Android 11 is extremely fast. So I think that's one of the main selling points, is if you want that experience of it just being really fast, then you would get this phone if you don't want to shell out $1,000+. You have the Snapdragon 888 as well, but I think this is still one of the cheapest Snapdragon 888 phones that you can buy right now. And performance on here is excellent. It can play games like crazy, doesn't heat up, super fast. So this is a really good option if you don't want to spend a ton of money on that 9 Pro. You do not have any SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. So you're not really losing a ton with the 9. It still retains a lot of the specs of the 9 Pro as far as the essential specs. So you do have on here stereo speakers, which sound great, good bass quality, very punchy. NFC is on board. The fingerprint scanner, again, under the display, very fast, but again at an awkward position all the way down below. So this phone does have really good cameras, and even if you're coming from the 7 Pro or 8 Pro or something like that, you'll still notice the difference in image quality here. So it's a 48 megapixel standard, 50 megapixel ultra wide, and you'll notice the image quality with that ultra wide. It takes really amazing ultra wide photos. You have a 2 megapixel depth sensor, and again, this is the same Hasselblad collaboration, 8K video, and 16 megapixel selfie camera. That all works great. You can see the images, good color, good detail, good depth of field on here. So I was happy with the photo quality on here as well. Video was pretty solid on this guy too. So this phone does have pretty impressive battery life, 4,500 milliamp battery, and you still get the 65-watt fast charger in the box on this guy, but you do get significantly slower wireless charging compared to the 9 Pro. But yeah, so I really like the battery situation on here. I was easily getting around 7 hours of screen on time, so I was really happy with that. So yeah, the 9 is definitely a good option to check out. All right, so next is the OnePlus 6T. This phone is trending at around $200, so you can find this for, I believe, $200 or lower. Again, all those links will be down below. Absolutely love this phone when I had it. So it's a glass back, aluminum frame, so you get that premium feeling design on here. It feels great in the hand. You have an optic AMOLED display at 6.5 6.41 inches. It's 1080p 402 for the PPI. I had no issues with the display. It's a water drop notch. You have respectable bezels, fairly bright. Also, you get good color on here as well, so zero issues with the display on here. This phone should be getting the Android 11 update as well, and performance wise it's very snappy, even with the Snapdragon 845, just bouncing through applications, multitasking and stuff like that. I had no issues, and gaming on here was just fine as well. I was able to play a lot of games on high settings as well too, so I was really happy with that. This phone does not have any type of micro SD support on here, but you do have 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM, so I feel like that should be enough for most people. But you do have on here just a single firing speaker, nothing fancy. It sounds fine, and there's no headphone jack on here, which I think was a little premature on this model, but you know, it's not on this one. And you also have on here NFC for mobile payments. The fingerprint scanner is under the display. It's very fast, so I was really happy with that. And this phone got a lot of flack for the cameras, but I just wasn't seeing it, maybe because it got, you know, software updates. But it's a dual camera setup, 16 and 20 megapixels. You also have 4K video and a 16 megapixel selfie camera. Pretty much you can see from the photos here, I thought they took great photos. Again, for somebody like me, you know, I'm just taking it out, taking a photo, looking at, am I getting good detail, am I getting good depth of field, am I getting the kind of shot that I want, especially for the price that I'm paying. And I feel like this phone definitely is going to take excellent photos for the price that you're paying. You get pretty good color, again, good detail. So I was happy with the cameras on here. Dynamic range was solid, so I really didn't have any issues with the camera on here. So you also get pretty decent battery on here, a 3700 milliamp battery with 20 watt fast charging. So I was averaging around 6 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time, so this is definitely an all-day phone for sure. Last is the OnePlus 8 Pro. So this comes in at a pretty sweet spot, I think, because it's well under $1,000 now. It's sitting at around $750, so I think it's a pretty good deal, especially if you're thinking about upgrading from like a 6T or even the 7 Pro. I think you're getting a decent upgrade here. You're getting a really nice design on here, aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. You also have a Fluid AMOLED display, 120 Hz, HDR10+, 6.78 inches, 1440p, 513 for the PPI. A beautiful display, punch hole, you know, the curved glass. It's a nice display. We already know what to expect from that. Of course, you're getting the latest version of Android. Everything is going to run extremely fast on this phone with the Snapdragon 865 5G chip, and then we have the Adreno 650. So you know you're going to get top tier performance when it comes to gaming and just overall bouncing in-app applications. No micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM on here. Stereo speakers are on board, so you get a nice loud punchy sound. You also have NFC on board with, again, the fingerprint scanner under the display, very fast for these OnePlus phones. And you also have a quad camera setup on here, a 48 megapixel standard, an 8 megapixel telephoto, 48 megapixel ultra wide, and a 5 megapixel color filter camera as well. So you have 4K video and a 16 megapixel selfie. I don't think the camera image quality on here is that much of a step up from the 7 Pro. So if you're coming from the 7 Pro wanting 8 Pro for camera, I honestly would go for the OnePlus 9 or 9 Pro. I think the image quality is slightly better, but I don't think it's worth the price you're going to pay for this phone. But you do have good cameras on this phone. You also have a 4510 milliamp battery with 30 watt fast charging. You also get fast wireless charging as well as reverse wireless charging as well. So this phone is overall going to be a pretty good beast. I think you get a really good value for your money if you're thinking about getting this phone. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.